His name is Jill. He is a middle school student who is a good student. He always solves the tasks at hand. But an unforeseen situation arose in his life. He fell in love with a girl in his class named Zero, who is known for causing trouble in class. One day she asked me to do her homework for her as she was going to play a game in the evening. Jill says he'll do his homework and asks her if he can play the game too. Zero says you can, as they are just in need of a healer, and invites them to come by the game in the evening. That same day, Jill returns home early due to a severe thunderstorm. Opening the door, he yells to his mom that he's already home. When asked by his mom why he's back early today, Jill replies that they were let out early because of the bad weather. Mom tells him to take a break and come down later for dinner. He asks if there was a package for him. Mom says there was a package, and it's under the door. Jill grabs the box and hurries to his room on the second floor. He hears his mom talking about how he's into games too. She reminds him not to forget to come downstairs to eat. Mom thinks maybe he's in such a hurry because he's going to play with a girl. Reaching up, he pulls out a helmet from the package to play Cosmos. This VR game is the most popular right now. All you need to play it is a helmet. He thinks about how he's still new to the game, and Zero must be an expert by now. He convinces himself that he can still do it. He gets a message on his phone from Zero that she's already waiting in the game. Putting on the helmet, Jill thinks about how you can think of it as their first date. And then a moment later, he's in the game and sees the greeting. Cosmos is a survival game. Here you experience the stories of myths of all countries. In this world you will find dangers on all sides, find treasures and encounter wonders. Jill thinks it's cool. He needs to choose a role for himself. He remembers Zero saying they need a healer, and he chooses the role of healer. When purchasing the Cosmos, he is given the opportunity to choose an outfit and decides to dress more formally since it's his first day. As the game begins to load, a thunderstorm in the city reaches the red warning level. Messages are appearing reminding residents to turn off all household electrical appliances to avoid accidents. A lightning discharge hits Jill's house and reaches his room via wires. An oblivious Jill imagines that their first date with Zero is about to begin. And then a lightning strike reaches him. He hears thunder, his whole body lunges, electric shocks throw him over the bed. After a while, Mom asks Jill if they turned off all the appliances because of the thunderstorm, but not hearing an answer, goes into his room. But upon entering the room, she is bewildered to see an empty bed with only a smoking helmet lying on it, and Jill is nowhere to be found. Zero sits on the ground, a broken sword beside her. There's a mob of horrible monsters standing around. She cries out in terror for help. Jill feels like his body is being electrocuted, but he finds the sensation comfortable. He shows up out of the blue and saves Zero. Zero thanks him for coming to her aid. She calls him her hero. They kiss, but Zero's kisses get faster and faster, with a squelching sound. Jill asks her to take her time or he's already got saliva all over his face. And then, opening his eyes, he sees that he is in the middle of the desert, and some lizard is licking his face with its long tongue. He throws the jigger away in a frenzy and calls out to Zero. He notices what a real sensation it was. He realizes that apparently he's already in the game. Jill feels the heat around him and reflects on the fact that when he first entered the game he should have been in the village as a newcomer, not in the desert with no one around. He decides to write Zero, but Zero's ID is not found by searching. Jill finds this strange, as he is sure he remembered her ID correctly in the game. But seeing no other option, he sets out to find the village on foot. After some time wandering through the desert, exhausted from the heat, Jill finds no village. Wondering where he's gotten to, he tries to contact customer service for help, but is told his location is out of the service area. This surprises and alarms him. He gets worried. Jill decides to step out and ask Zero what's up. He tries to quit the game, but he can't. He presses the button again and again, but he can't get out. He realizes with horror that he may suddenly find himself trapped in the game. He receives a message stating that he has started a mission called Survive. In this mission, he needs to survive, but he never saw a reward or penalty for failure. Jill feels frustrated and angry that he wanted to play a game with Zero, but now he's trapped in the game and can't get out of it. He tried every way he knew of to get out, but nothing worked. He couldn't even contact anyone. As the hours passed, Jill began to come to terms with the fact that he was stuck in the game. The sensations were incredibly realistic, and he felt the effects of dehydration and fatigue just as he did in real life. He knew that if he didn't find a source of water, he would soon die. Picking up a familiar rock, he remembered that he had once read that this type of rock was often found near water. and decided to survey the area around him in search of a water source. As he had hoped, his assumptions proved correct, and after a while he finally found a cave with water. He rushed to the source of water and drank it greedily. When he had quenched his thirst, he thought how good it felt to be alive. Having solved the water issue, he began to consider how he could get out. He checked his in-game card and found that he was in an unconfirmed area of the game. He began to check his stats and equipment, realizing that his first level had meager stats and no combat skills. So in case of danger, the only option is to run. Then without any hope he decided to check the weapons section, and was surprised to see that the healer was supposed to have a sword. He noticed that the display was showing the strength of the sword, and it was already at 1%. Gil noticed that the game visualized everything down to the wear and tear on his gear. Armed with his sword, he went in search of food. Hearing a strange sound, Gil decided to investigate its source. He came across a cave filled with animal skeletons with teeth marks on their bones. He realized he'd seen those teeth marks in a book before. At that moment, he heard low growling sounds and realized it was desert wolves. These monsters were level 5, fast and strong, with a crushing attack that dealt 200 damage. Finding no other choice but to fight, Gil drew his sword, ready to face the wolves. If he lost, he knew he would die. During his first year of high school, he was president of the Kendo Club. He became the youngest master to reach the 6th step of Kendo in China. But why he studied Kendo? It's very simple. His mother was a big fan of Kendo, so she made her son study Kendo from an early age at school. That's how he got into Kendo. At first he thought Kendo was simple, put on fancy clothes and do fancy moves. But when he started training, he realized that this sport is not easy at all. And standing in front of a uniformed opponent, your heart races, your breath hitches, and an inexplicable sense of fear grips you. Fear completely consumes your body, making it difficult to react and adapt. Such fear arises from weakness. The only way to make yourself strong is to constantly train, strengthening and pushing yourself. So he used all his free time to practice, repeating the moves thousands of times, constantly losing, constantly getting injured, constantly exercising. This continued until he became the youngest master of the 6th step. You never know how scary your next opponent might be, fighting a monster he thought he had underestimated. There was no effect when attacking with the sword, which apparently puzzled him, and he remembered that the desert wolf's weak point was the abdomen, and he realized that attacking places other than the abdomen was ineffective. The wolf attacked him again and he said, "What the hell?" Knowing his weakness, there was nothing you could do to change that. The thing was too fast and every time it attacked it did so with the intent to kill. If the attacks have no effect, he can only defend, which will result in a loss. He remembered and decided to try one of the kendo skills, thinking that if it had an effect, he could kill the wolf. His blood spurted as the wolf sank its teeth into his shoulder. But he purposely let the wolf bite himself to let his guard down, and his sword pierced the wolf's belly. A message appeared that the desert wolf had been killed. He had gained 6,000 experience points and level 5. Interestingly, after leveling up, his wounds completely healed. It's a game world like any other game. Killing enemies gives experience and leveling up gives skill points. But what is a marketplace? When he opened this hidden mall, he saw that in addition to weapons and defensive gear, there were also household and electronic appliances that cost many levels to unlock. Gil wondered who would buy appliances in the game, and at such a high price. Clicking the mercenaries section, he saw many mercenaries with defense, magic, assassinations, etc. He eyed the holograms of available mercenaries with curiosity. Gil decided to get a snack, and for 5 levels he bought himself a bun and a coke. He decided to get out of here, and first he looked at his specs. Status was fine, but it was unclear how to get new abilities. For now, he would have to depend on increasing his characteristics to save his life. The system reported that points once awarded cannot be adjusted, a statistic that will likely directly determine his future in the game. Even the desert wolf he had killed earlier had more strength and speed than him. It all seemed strange. He changed characteristics and felt his body change afterwards, filling with power and becoming more plastic. It was quite a pleasant sensation. He saw someone walk by. Looking around, he realized it was a whole pack of wolves. He figured it was a good time for them to show up, just in time to check on the results of the pumping. The wolves rushed at him to attack, but he skillfully wielded his sword and managed to overwhelm the entire pack. With his current level, the wolf armor didn't save him. Strengthening the characteristics improved the sword arts as well. After he destroyed all the wolves, the system issued a congratulations on reaching level 15, gaining 24,000 experience points. He figured it was much easier to kill wolves as his level increased. When he came out of the cave, Gil saw that it was night. He decided to look for a way out before it got too hot. Moving around, he wondered if there might be other players like him who were also trapped, and then he discovered something. He saw a lot of dead wolves that seemed to have had all their blood sucked out of them by something. He wondered if it could be another player who used the brutal method, but he quickly realized that the thing that had killed those wolves was not human. And then he saw some kind of creature on the rock. This was a monster of an even higher level. It was a monster of a different scale than the desolate wolves. This creature in the desert survived off the blood of other animals with absolute speed, and no one could hide from its hunt. Even though he had prepared himself to face all sorts of monsters, the fierce killing intent of this creature was irresistible. He felt as if the monster had pressed him into the ground, robbing him of the ability to move. It was the first time he had ever felt something so scary, but he decided not to let it scare him. He wondered what the monster was trying to do, give him a weapon or lure him in. He wanted to slit his neck, but the scene was like déjà vu. When he faced the monster, he realized that normal attacks couldn't hurt it. He called the monster a bastard and was surprised when the monster called him human and compared his kind to maggots. He replied by imagining the beast as a laver with the brain of a dung beetle. The demon laughed, saying that it had been hundreds of years since he had last met a human, and that he was thrilled about it. But Jill wasn't moved by the monster's words. He still had a long life ahead of him, and he didn't want to die in a place like this. He squeezed out all his strength and activated his extraordinary fighting spirit. All his stats increased to 100. He pounced on the monster with all his might and attacked it, but the weapon's strength reached 0% and it broke. He had no choice but to attack the monster with his fists to take away its experience, but the demon made him look foolish. He mocked him like a maggot. He still believed that he could defeat the monster despite his current state. But it was too late. Beast gathered all his strength and summoned a powerful attack that killed him in the game as a player. Slowly opening his eyes, he realized he was back in the real world, and relief swept over him as he examined his body. Gil saw that he was unharmed, but how did he end up here? Was he out of the game or was he still trapped in it? Disoriented, he heard the sound of the door opening and saw a beautiful girl enter the room, whom he excitedly called out. She recognized that he was awake. The girl shouted to her grandfather that he was awake. He thought the game would eventually lead him to a village of newcomers, but he soon realized his mistake. It wasn't a game or a town of newcomers, and he asked them what he should do. He was told that his grandfather had found him on a hunting trip almost dead, but not quite dead. They also informed him that they were not NPCs or players from the game. He looked at them incredulously. He insisted it was still a game. He showed them his game state tab, mission tab, equipment tab, mini-map, but they only stared at him in confusion. His grandfather informed him that no one can leave the Latona desert where they are currently imprisoned. They are imprisoned here and the only way to gain freedom is to find the location of the Kebri temple, which is said to be located in an endless labyrinth in the desert. The girl explained that they were brought here by a thunderstorm while hunting giant dragons on the continent of Bergama. Grandfather added that even the gods could be imprisoned here, and countless people went in search of the temple. But none of them came back alive. The young man gradually came to terms with his fate as reality began to set in. He's trapped in this place with no way out. Grandpa suggested they take a walk around town. Gil made sure he was in the game. He was transported right into the game, just like in Manhwa. At least he had a purpose. He could find Kebri's temple and kill Nabri and return afterward. While he was pondering, he was approached by a girl asking what he was doing there. He apologized and said he had nothing to do and went for a walk. He described the Latona desert to the girl, but she informed him that the Latona desert surrounds the place where they are. This meant that finding the temple would take some time. The girl asked if he would be looking for the temple and he said yes. The girl warned him that there were many strong monsters in the desert, some of which even his grandfather could not defeat. He assured her that he was an experienced fighter and could handle the danger. Suddenly they were attacked by Boban. Sally blocked the attack with a wall of fire. When he asked her why they were attacked, she explained that the thief hunters in the area were scarier than the monsters they didn't want to hunt in the Latonian desert. That's why they often rob other people. As well as being cowards, they hunt and kill their own kind to make a living. Boban said she escaped last time, but this time it won't be easy to escape. The girl asked Gil to leave while she apprehended the attackers. Jill replied that it was not in his nature to abandon a comrade in a difficult moment. While they were dealing with the attackers, the grandfather noticed that a thunderstorm was coming and that his granddaughter was long gone. Boban grabbed Jill by the face and pinned him against a tree, asking him who he thought he was. Gil grabbed Boban's wrist and threw him off of him. Boban held onto his wrist, thinking that Gil had sprained it. Sally expressed concern for Jill's well-being, but he assured her that he was fine. Sally asked Boban what he was trying to accomplish. He replied that he had repeatedly asked Sally to be his girlfriend, but she told Boban that they couldn't be together and advised him to forget about it. Boban, pointing at Jill, asked that Sally chose Jill over him, to which Sally replied that Jill was just a friend. Boban accused Sally of being a pathetic excuse. He challenged Jill to a fight, stating that he would stop bothering Sally if Jill won. Gil accepted the challenge. Sally asked if he could win. She warned him that Boban was the strongest shadow swordsman in town. Swordsmen utilizing the power of shadows had an advantage in speed with amazing physical durability. Sally worried that Boban would kill him. Gil replied that he had already died once, but he wasn't going to die, he wanted to get out of here. He said there's no way to avoid a fight. And if they win, they can walk away. Gil ran up to Boban and began to strike him very quickly. But not one of his blows reached the target, because he dodged them very quickly. Boban was surprised that this was all a guy who liked Sally could do. Gil couldn't understand why Boban was only dodging and not attacking. Boban said he didn't want to just beat up an unarmed man, so he threw Jill a sword. He said he wanted to do it by the book. Gil expressed surprise that Boban could play by the rules. Boban said he was about to show Shadow's true power, and he lunged at Jill with great speed. During the short fight, Jill tried his best to fend off Boban's attacks, but he was very fast. And now Jill had a huge wound on her shoulder. He turned on the healing effect and the wound healed. When Boban's companions saw this, they laughed and called Jill a priest. Boban told Jill to leave Sally to him and get out. But Jill replied that he was afraid of losing to a priest in front of Sally. These words made Boban furious. He promised to unleash the full power of the Shadow Swordsman on Jill. He created 2 more of his doppelgangers. Gil realized that defeating Boban would not be so easy. Boban promised Jill before he died to show him the famous Shadow Swordsman attack that can't be repelled. To which Gil urged him not to talk, but to fight. Boban ordered one of his clones to play with Jill. The defense against the clone's attack was grueling, but Jill managed to fend it off with a lot of luck. Boban was stunned that he did well and said he underestimated him too much, vowing not to play with Jill again. Boban said he would find a suitable grave for Jill and that his end was near. But in the midst of the battle, Grandpa came in and said it was time for them to leave as a thunderstorm was coming. They had to return home because of the impending storm. Sally treated Jill's wounds and advised him to be patient. Gil apologized for the inconvenience he was causing them. Sally was surprised at how strong he was, since he hadn't leveled up after gaining experience. Jill was surprised to learn that Sally and Grandpa knew Boban well. Sally explained that they had grown up together as siblings. Gil thanked her for her assistance. Sally replied that she should thank him. Then she went to help her grandfather. It rained just as hard that day, and Gil thought his mother was probably worried about him being missing. He thought about getting home as soon as possible. After defeating Boban and completing his mission, he received a map of Latona. All that's left is to follow the map to find the Holy Temple and defeat the boss there. And then he can return. Gil decided to go searching as soon as the rain stopped. He also got a mysterious key that can open treasure chests of different colors. Open chests will randomly drop gems, weapons or equipment. Grandpa came in. He sincerely apologized for not checking on Jill sooner, but the rain made it difficult. Gil said he was fine and asked if he needed anything from him, but Grandpa was only concerned about his injuries. He assured Jill that the abrasions would heal in a few days. Grandpa admitted that he didn't think Gil could win a fight against Boban, since Boban was one of the strongest swordsmen in the village. Gil agreed, if Boban hadn't underestimated him, he wouldn't have a chance of winning. Grandpa explained that during a battle it is important to rely on more than just strength, but to consider factors such as willpower and the ability to analyze the situation. Jill then asked Grandpa if Boban and Sally had really grown up together, and why he had become like that.